Am I 29F being too extreme for considering divorcing my husband 33M? My husband and I have been married a year and a half. We started trying to have kids 6 months ago. As soon as we started, we essentially stopped having sex. I've always had the higher libido, but he completely stopped being affectionate and even started falling asleep in his recliner and not coming to bed most nights. I confronted him a few weeks back and he admitted that he isn't completely on board with having kids anymore. He said, "The world is a shitty place. Who would want to bring a kid into this?" I asked if he was sure he didn't want any and he said, "IDK, maybe one eventually." Before we got married we discussed kids and I thought we were on the same page. There wasn't any hesitation or inkling that he didn't want them. We'd always talked about having 2 and then a third if we could afford it. So now I'm so confused and upset. Otherwise, I wouldn't say our relationship is perfect, but I love my husband and we've always been able to work through any issues. We have the same goals, dreams, with the exception of kids, which, again, is a new development. Would I be silly to hang around in hopes that he changes his mind and is more on board? I'll be turning 30 this year and I'm terrified of waiting too long and finding out it's too late. At the same time, I love this man. I have such high hopes and dreams for our lives, I never expected to have to even think about this. Even if he would change his mind, now I'm worried he'd be doing it just to make me happy. I don't want to bring a child into the world with a father that isn't 100% on board. Too long did not read. My husband changed his mind and said he isn't sure he wants kids now. Am I being too quick to consider divorce or should I hang on a little longer in hopes he changes his mind again? Am I being too quick to consider divorce or should I hang on a little longer in hopes he changes his mind again? Listen, if you want kids, you can't afford to give him years to jerk you around on a topic that you had agreed was already settled. You guys need to do couples counseling because you need an answer within a reasonable timeframe. Based on your comments, I am betting he never wanted kids and is hoping you will stay with him due to the sunken cost fallacy. I think you really need to go to therapy together. There's so much going on here. Both of your feelings are valid. It makes total sense that you are upset now that he has changed his mind. It also makes total sense to me that the last 2 years would make someone change their mind about having kids. Don't stay with him. Get a divorce while you still have time to have a family. Yes, you'd be a fool to wait around wasting your dwindling fertile years on him changing his mind again. Would you even trust him if he did change his mind? I wouldn't have a baby with someone so indecisive. It's best to cut your losses and find someone with the same goals as you. Would you be down to adopt? Sure, the world is shitty, and so many kids don't have a home in it. I mean, if that's really his reason, then maybe he'd be down to help a kid who's already a victim of the world. I can understand that's a deal breaker for you. If doesn't want to be a father, the worst thing you can do is force him into it. I don't think it's an overreaction. See if there are any other possible issues before making big decisions. Depression and various medical issues such as hypothyroidism can change your ability to be positive and hopeful. Address his fears about the world and emotional state and see if it changes for him. World's fucked. I'm thinking it's more he doesn't want to fuck a kid up by making them exist now. I was sick for a week after January 6th. I thought the whole fucking social contract of the United States was going to crash down because of a bunch of morons in red hats. I somewhat still feel like that. Have you talked to him about why he doesn't want kids right now? Or do you think he's bullshitting you and never wanted kids in the first place? The problem with divorce is people don't dare to do it. Why do they dare to get married in the first place if you are too scared to divorce? Few days ago a husband was demonized in this sub because he wanted kids and her wife didn't, and he gave her an ultimatum, either we have kids or we break up. Today the genders are reversed, and the input that op receives is, tell him that if he doesn't want kids you'll break up with him. The double standards in this sub, depending on genders, are ridiculous. If he doesn't want kids, you can't force him. If it's a deal breaker for you, legally separate and move on. World has changed a lot, and with lockdown people are investing time in some and see stuff that makes them realize that they don't want kids. Adoption is a mutual decision. If he's not okay, that's his decision, no one can judge him for that. Forcing him into anything against his comfort will cause more chaos down the lane. 2020 and 2021 happened. Give it some time and maybe he'll come round. That and therapy might help. He very likely knows he doesn't want kids, but he's afraid of losing you. It is a very difficult and painful position to be in, but it's one that doesn't have a compromise. He's either with you or not. If he doesn't want kids now, there is a likely chance he never will. Then you'll be 45 with no kids, still married to this lump. Do the benefits outweigh the risk? No. Divorce in this case is the only option. Start looking for your next Mr. Right immediately. I would try couples therapy. If he refuses or decided he doesn't want kids after a few months of therapy, time to leave. This kind of thing is an absolute deal breaker. He should be 100% aware of that, and if he doesn't think this is a deal breaker, then he truly doesn't care about your wants and needs. You need someone who really wants kids to be with you, because kids are hard on people and marriages. If you have a kid he doesn't want, your marriage will absolutely fail. Lighten up, people. Sex is one of the first things to go when a significant other is conflicted, uncertain and scared. The reality of your children plan has sunk in. It is life-altering. It doesn't mean he is mentally defective. The idea of not having children is one of the clear deal-breaker, and there are no winners when either side is pressured into having or not having then. If his love for you hasn't made him make a decision by now, what makes you think that you will somehow be able to change his mind? And why would you want to have kids with someone who is not really on board? Even more importantly, would you be happy in life if you don't change his mind and you stay with him, sans kids? Have you looked into freezing your eggs while the two of you go to therapy? The most troubling thing to me is the way he handled this. He avoided you by sleeping in his recliner. Do you want to have children with someone who handles difficult situations this way? I think he hopes that your desire to have children will just go away. In my opinion, you should be able to be happy with your husband with or without kids. If he was happy to have kids with you at first, and suddenly now he is doubting, I think it's time to have a talk. What changed his mind? Not the asshole. Kids is a very important subject in a couple. Either you want them or not, but you two need to be in the same page. Speaking as a woman with infertility, I started at 28 trying to get pregnant. Now I'm almost 33 and multiple fertilities treatment failed, money drained, and still not baby, so I wouldn't let go my best last years. 30-35. You're about to enter those years and not getting any younger. Please consider this and talk to your husband. Others suggesting couples therapy is a good idea. Continue communicating your feelings, and don't pressure each other at all. The last thing you want is him feeling guilty and bringing a child into a marriage that could possibly become resentful. Your husband could be going through a bit of a crisis. These past 2 years have pushed me to be child-free personally. I assume he's going through a tough time mentally. Of course you deserve an upfront answer, but he may literally have no idea what he wants anymore. Be cautious and have a plan for your relationship this year. If you think your husband genuinely wanted kids in the past and now he's saying the world sucks too much to have kids, I think it's possible he's depressed. How has he been doing in general? Do you think this might be a reaction to the pandemic rather than his true feelings? People are allowed to change their minds. This decision is a deal breaker. I wouldn't want to be with someone who wants kids when I don't. I would feel like I'm holding that person back from what they truly want. Your husband isn't wrong about the state of the world. RN. It's not a smart time to have children. Unless you are okay with the chance of your baby possibly getting COVID. I don't think you're being extreme. I was on the fence and decided to have a child at 34. I was lucky and got pregnant quickly. I have other friends who were not so lucky, including one who waited and waited until her husband was ready. She's now newly single, childless, 46, and has been told she's too old to adopt. She regrets waiting. You need to give him a reasonable deadline to make up his mind, and don't be afraid to move on if he can't commit to creating a family with you. Your husband wants to play all nice and altruistic, but he simply doesn't want kids. He hoped he can weigh you down and hold you off long enough to not have children, but it is failing, so he is stringing you along with maybe one eventually. That eventually will never come and you will be stuck with this man. Better to find a man who wants to have and raise children together than pursue this issue with this husband and wind up alone with children. Many people easily talk in abstracts until the time comes to put up or shut up. At least he was decent enough to allow you agency to decide which is more important, him or children. He's also pursuing a bit of self-interest to avoid child support payments as well. Since raising children can be such a life-changing pursuit, it is better to not waste your time and effort convincing someone not already as enthusiastic for children as you. Better to be sure than be regretful, because 21 years is a long stretch of time to be unhappy, single parent. I mean, trying for a baby in the middle of a global pandemic probably doesn't help ease his mind. You aren't crazy for waiting around, but you aren't crazy if you leave him either. The pandemic is certainly a reason for someone to change their minds about having kids, either right now or permanently. However, the fact that he didn't talk to you about it, but just stopped being intimate and avoided the conversation is really alarming. Do you want to have kids with a partner who can't communicate about big issues? I'd say take a few months and try to work through this with him. What would need to change for him to be back to having kids? Pandemic over? More savings? How long are you willing to wait, etc.? I suggest therapy for both of you. You both have valid feelings here and just need help communicating them. It's not clear whether your husband has actually changed his mind completely or is really freaked out about having a kid in the middle of a global pandemic, which is a totally valid feeling. If you're otherwise happy in your marriage, get some help talking this out. Is bearing a child that important to you? Because if his problem is bringing a kid to this world but he has no problem in raising one, I think adoption might be a great way to solve both your needs. And adopting a child can be as fulfilling as conceiving one. He's got no interest in having kids, full stop. You've made a picking error. Put it right. Good luck. This is the topic for marriage counseling. You both need to be completely honest if it's yes, no, or yes but X time in the future. Good luck, my dear. I would recommend counseling for you guys. Figure out what the root of this is and see if you can work through it. If it turns out you are both wanting different things, then go from there, but I would try seeking help from a professional first. No. It sounds like he was never on board and you should just divorce. I don't think suggesting divorce is always best, but you need to know a few things. You as a woman only have so long to have children that don't have a high risk of birth defects. If he isn't on board, you have to locate a man who is, get with him, get married, and start baby making. This sounds easy but in reality could take you 2 years or more. Divorce is sometimes long, and if he fights it then it could be longer. Then you still need to emotionally get over that to find another guy. Good luck, hope it all works out for you. I say fight for this relationship and go to couples counseling, don't walk away without having tried this first. Don't listen to the people on here screaming divorce like that's a quick fix, it's traumatic in itself. Also at 30 your womb is still extremely viable and healthy. I wouldn't start worrying until mid-30s, but you should have the answers about your marriage way before then. Give yourself no more than a year to fix this with your husband, and if he hasn't changed his mind then you know what you have to do. If I were you I would end it straight away, breach of contract. I always knew I wanted kids and I would have never ever given up that dream and would feel so betrayed if someone tried to steal that from me. He lied and made you believe that you would get your dream. If he changes his mind, he's not going to want 2-3. You could go to therapy, but for how long? He may not have ever wanted kids, or even be able to have them. Having stayed with a "we will have kids eventually" guy and burning all my childbearing years second woman he did this to, I find out later, put it on the table as a showstopper for you. Get some counseling, and if that doesn't work, leave. Seriously, you are at an age when your fertility is in decline, you can't put it aside forever. My guess is he just doesn't want to try having kids during the pandemic. Your husband has a point in this world is shitty. It really is. No one would want to raise a kid in a world like this. I'm not married so I don't have a lot to say, but some people aren't able to have kids that soon. I know multiple people that been trying for years and not months. To no success. Do those people want divorces? I'm not sure since that's private to them. So if y'all aren't able to have kids, Look at more y'all have and why y'all are together in first place. I even know people that been married for about 8 years, been trying to have a kid for around 5 years. Edit, I should add. I had neighbors that wanted 3 kids but they never got one. They still stayed together. Oh no honey, he flipped the script on you. You're right, you are turning 30, that means you need to stop wasting time with a man who won't give you a child. Please think about what type of father this guy will be considering how he is acting right now, going back on promises, completely changing it up, saying he doesn't want children. He'll do it to make you happy and you'll end up miserable because your husband didn't want a kid and you're doing it by yourself. Take it from someone who has just come out of a relationship with someone like your husband, do not wait around. I spent 5 years with my boyfriend, and he promised me the world. Marriage, kids, our own home, and life full of adventure after he finished his courses and got his business set up. So I put aside my dreams to help him create his, getting him clients, looking over his paperwork, setting up meetings, being there on his graduation day. And when it came time for him to make good on his promises to me, he did the same thing. Don't be like me and wait around. If you want kids, really want kids, then you have to get out now because men like that never change. The world is a shitty place and not coming to bed, falling asleep in his recliner sounds like he might have depression, or is going through a hard time mentally. Especially if he's not up to sex anymore. Does he have other signs of depression? Is he eating, working, showering, exercising? The past year has been a shit show all around and that just might be taking a huge toll on his mental health. A therapist for him or the both of you might do you better than divorce. Sounds like you're too focused on the idea of having kids that you can't see that your husband may be depressed. I'm actually getting my testosterone checked next week myself at 30. I was on methadone for a year and just never wanted sex. I didn't even jerk for a year. It was crazy. Part of the reason me and the ex broke up. She'd beg me and I just didn't want any part of it. Maybe he's got low testosterone. Could be a lot of things. Maybe he doesn't actually want children. Kids are generally considered a deal-breaking subject, which is why you and most other couples discuss it before marriage. Changing your mind is essentially breaking the contract you agreed on. If kids are important to you, as they are to list people who want them, then you have no more time to waste. A year to finalize your divorce and 2 years at least to find a new partner. You need to get moving ASAP. Is he depressed? You don't have the same goals and dreams. Dude lied to you for months if not years. This is a huge betrayal. I agree that he probably waited till you were married and you were locked in before doing the switch on you, hoping that you stay anyway. If you can deal with this betrayal and sacrifice your dream of having children, by all means, stay with him. But is having children the only thing he lied to you about? Cut your losses.